It is January 7th, 2025, and the Raiders have decided to pull the plug on the Antonio Pierce. Would you call it an experiment or experience? I'll call it experience, because I mean, it was definitely different than I would say many of the other head coaches that have been, hired and had short tenures in the NFL. Like Antonio Pierce was like, he stepped in and was a major improvement over Josh McDaniels at the time. But, I felt like Antonio Pierce never really found his footing as, his own head coach when it came time to, really build his own team. And really, he didn't have a lot of time to, but, just tell me as a Raider fan, what are your thoughts right now? How are you feeling?
So I'm going to try not to take forever on this, but I'm probably just going to try to also cover everything. First off, the weird aspect to this was that the Raiders allowed him to do his end of season press conference, which led most people to believe that he was still the head coach of the Raiders moving forward. And I watched this press conference and I was just a little dumbfounded, because I mean the media asked him, at times to give, maybe what can he improve on? And his answers were just very bland and not specific. He would everything a coach needs to improve on, everything. I need to improve on everything. It's like, yeah, I agree with you, but that doesn't make me very intrigued. Like that doesn't instill confidence that you're focusing on very specific things. It's just like I just need to be better. Actually, the most specific thing he eventually said was that he needs to trust his gut more. Like he said, I think he alluded to like in 2023 he trusted his gut, whereas in 2024 he didn't. And then I think coming off of that, somebody asked him, not to put words in your mouth, but does that relate to the quarterback position? And he essentially said, yeah. Like that was, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that was a big one for him. Was the quarterback decision to start the season was a huge mistake and regret, I think, for Antonio Pierce, which I'm not shocked because from what I saw in the preseason, my personal opinion was Gardner Minshew looks like shit, and at least Aiden O'Connell can throw the ball, effectively to his receivers. And I think that instead of going with his gut, which was Aiden O'Connell will do better, he went with, yeah, but Gardner Minshew's a veteran and he's won in this league before, So that makes sense. His explanation of going with his gut, right?
Yeah, I think in retrospect, that might have been one of his first mistakes as a head coach was, I guess the way that he handled the quarterback situation, because I'm not even going to lie. I thought Gardner Minshew was better than Aiden O'Connell as well. I don't know if I still feel that way, especially seeing how the season played out. But, Antonio Pierce really was given the opportunity by Mark Davis because of the performance that he had late in the year. The previous season and the players really vouching for him. What I think is weird is how much that the players vouched for Antonio Pierce, yet they weren't as vocal for about their support for quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Like, could that be the difference? Is like, I guess, how the locker room sort of felt towards the O'Connell Minshew sort of quarterback controversy, like or quarterback competition. Like, I don't know. It's just Antonio Pierce should have made the decision, I think, to stay with what helped him get the job in the first place, which was, he benched Jimmy Garoppolo, the guy with more experience, for the guy that he felt was the better quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think the real mistake too was, I get it. He was decisive during the preseason, but I did not agree with the timing in which he made the decision. When it was it the second to last preseason game, or was that the final preseason game where they just yanked O'Connell out of the game after he threw a pick six?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so like
Well-
that just kind of killed his confidence right there. And like he's
Yeah,
I
It was
didn't agree with the timing. You got to
Yeah.
let him go back there, regroup, regather himself, not just like, oh, you know what? That pick six, that's the reason why I'm not playing, or like I played myself out of this. Like, I don't know.
yeah. I think I want to say that was like the first play of the fourth quarter too. Like it was like you could have just not let him play in the fourth quarter like you probably should have, or just let him play out the fourth quarter since he's already against fourth stringers anyways. So that was definitely odd. I'd say one thing, we've had comments on here before about whether or not Antonio Pierce deserves another season's chance at being the coach. Specifically, I want to say relating to the Richard Sherman podcast talk of if the Raiders fire Antonio Pierce, that's bullshit. Blah 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 blah. Right? We talked
Yeah.
about that. And I want to say we had live comments or something where somebody gave some solid points of. I'll say the one thing that I can agree as far like had the Raiders kept Antonio Pierce, the optimist in me would have said, well, it is true that he didn't get a fair crack at a good roster with a good quarterback, or at least getting a quarterback. Like if they had drafted a quarterback this year, let's just say that they had lost to who did they beat the Broncos the final week of the season in 2023. Let's say they lost that game.
Yeah.
But because he beat the Chiefs, because he just raw dogged the Chargers, he earned his job, right? The players wanted him so bad. Mark Davis caves in. Yeah, Antonio Pierce, you're the head coach. Congrats. Because of this is actually the perfect example is the Broncos game because they instead lost to the Broncos. Let's say they draft Bo Nix. I don't know if they would have. I would like to think that Tom Telesco was going best player available no matter what. And let's say it was one pick difference. They were up at they were at 13. So let's say they were at 12, which was the Broncos.
Yeah.
And they take the quarterback. And let's just say it's Bo Nix. And, maybe he's so much better that Devontae doesn't want to leave. Maybe he's so much better that we win more games. We go around 500, right? I would say Antonio Pierce is probably still the head coach. And I guess that's just weird to say. Like, obviously, I'm glad we have Brock Bowers. It's just weird to say because it's situational, and I think this is how it goes for a lot of coaches and general managers. I mean, Rand Carthon, however you say it, getting fired by the Tennessee Titans. I'm not gonna lie to you, I kind of think it's bullshit on their part. He traded players last year. I know this is off topic, but he built himself towards this upcoming draft. He did sign a lot of players and spend a lot of money, and they ended up being the worst team in football. Yeah, that looks pretty bad, but like, you don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
What do you expect? It's the same thing here. So any Raider fan that's like, I can't believe they fired Antonio Pierce, which I think is probably not many of you. I understand the thought process, and I would have understood like coming into this morning, like we had a conversation on the phone around noon, and I was like, yeah, it's looking like they're keeping him, man. Like I guess, we'll have our pod tonight. And I think by 7 p.m. we'll know. Like if they haven't fired him tonight, he's the head coach. And then like 2 hours later, they fired him, and it was like, okay, there you go.
Yeah. And then I called Mike again after that, and I was like, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And he was like, "A whole lot better than this morning." But
Yeah.
I have to say, like, all right, just a reminder, like, people, head coaches in the NFL who get fired, or any coach, it's not necessarily that we're celebrating somebody losing their job, but like, Mike over here is a fan of the team, and I guess from Mike's perspective, or my perspective of like the 49ers firing Nick Sorensen, I don't feel like he gives the 49ers the best chance to win, calling games from the defensive side. Mike probably doesn't feel like Antonio Pierce gives the Raiders the best chance to win. Mike just wants what's best for his team. And, I hope that Antonio Pierce doesn't take it as like, oh, everybody's like laughing at me, or like, this is victory lap. like everybody wants to see me fail. No, it's less about that and more about like, the NFL is a business and they have to cater to the fans, to get the best product, right? This morning, I told Mike on the phone, I felt like it would have been an unserious move for the Raiders to have run it back again with Antonio Pierce and, the same coaching staff as this year. Like that's
I was
just
gonna get
not
that.
that's just
Yeah.
not a serious move.
No, that would have been horrible.
Like I feel like the fans deserve better, and Mark Davis owes it, I think, to Raider fans to let them know that, we're going to try and get the best people in here. And, they just got Tom Brady as an owner. Mike, you even said it in text. There's no way Tom Brady is going to let an interim coach, just be, it's not so much the interim part, but just an inexperienced interim head coach. Like Antonio Pierce just lacks the experience.
Yeah, I think in part, okay, that was the other thing from the press conference that Antonio Pierce said that really rubbed many people, including myself, the wrong way, was when he was asked, do you see any changes coming to your coaching staff? Something along those lines. And he essentially said no, or at least not right now. But it was like a no. Like, no, I don't. It was like he shrugged it like, no, I don't see any changes coming. Okay. Patrick Graham's contract is up. The offensive coordinator position is an interim offensive coordinator. So by NFL law, they have to go through the Rooney Rule process in a hiring process for their offensive coordinator. Maybe they go the bullshit route, interview two. Let's be honest here. I mean, the Patriots just did this today. They interview two black candidates, and then they just hire the guy that they want, all along.
Yep.
Which would have, in theory, if Antonio Pierce is telling the truth, it would have been Scott Turner. Because according to Antonio Pierce, he liked the way that he was proud of the way the team finished the season, and the offense was like looking right, I think is what he said. Something along those lines. Oh boy. So just to your point, it would have been so unserious if they had actually kept the same coaching staff. Anybody that's watched this podcast knows that I love Patrick Graham. Last year when it was Antonio Pierce or, in theory, Jim Harbaugh, I was saying the reason why I would pick Antonio Pierce is because with Antonio Pierce, we keep Patrick Graham, and I want continuity and consistency for this franchise. And I will get back to that later because that's the whole point to all this, right? And it sucks. We're firing another coach, but you got to find the right guy. And that's why what you just said about, well, there's no way that Tom Brady just comes in here and settles for an interim head coach to be the guy long term. That's exactly what I'm saying. You need it's not that they need an experienced head coach. They need the right head coach. I don't care how much experience, but you need the right guy. And I'm sorry, interim coaches, they rarely work out. Like rarely work out. And it just looks unserious. Anytime a team has an interim head coach, it's like we know they're not making the playoffs. We know that they're not a serious team, and chances are the reason why they have an interim coach is because they already suck to begin with. But the Saints, Jets, Bears this year, it's like fucking, they suck. Clearly, we don't care about facing them. And I think most people would feel the same way about the Raiders this year, in part because Antonio Pierce went from linebackers coach for 2 years in the NFL. Before that, around college, to suddenly being an NFL head coach, it's like, it doesn't work that way. You got to work your way up.
But also,
it's not serious.
Like, I feel like one of the main reasons why Antonio Pierce is not coming back is because last season he at least ignited something in the locker room for all of them to, band together and want to play for one another and, have confidence in the team. So What did the Raiders finish last year? What was their record, Mike?
Maybe 6 or 7 wins. I don't remember.
They were 8-9 last year.
Mm.
They finished 8-9, with Antonio Pierce, and this season they are 4-13. 4-13. So
Yep.
after having a full off season with Antonio Pierce and more time with him as at the helm, they got worse.
Right.
That's the reason why. There's not that same vote of confidence from the locker room. There's not that same vote of confidence from the fan base. It's that is the specific reason I think why Antonio Pierce got fired. It was, hey, we gave you the opportunity to coach this team. This is your own team. You're not taking Josh McDaniels' team and motivating them more. This is Antonio Pierce, Tom Telesco, which they're keeping Telesco, right? Or as of right now, they are?
They are. They are keeping him this upcoming season, and I think that's the correct move.
Yeah. So, they have Telesco. They drafted players, and then what we saw this year is they could never get the run game going. It was like maybe three or four games this year where they could actually run the football.
Yeah,
out of 17 games.
Yeah, at least 1 or 2 of them being, in the last 2 wins.
Yeah, and so, when you look at it from Mark Davis's perspective, we already knew going in that Antonio Pierce was already he had earned the job, but he was lacking the experience and I guess the connections to really add to his coaching staff. And that's why we saw guys like Cliff Kingsbury back out at the very last second.
I think maybe that it was weird because he kind of agreed to be the offensive coordinator. I think what really happened there was, I can coach the second overall pick, who is definitely going to be a quarterback, relative to I don't know what the Raiders were selling him on, but sitting at the 11th pick, no promises that we're going to get a quarterback in the draft. And, looking at free agency, we're looking at guys like Gardner Minshew and, maybe Jacoby Brissett or some shit like that. He'd be like, okay, yeah, I guess I could work with that. He was given offered a 3-year deal, I think. And then apparently it also came down to money, but that was the whole thing. I think, but to your point, yes, I think part of the problem with him, he's the interim coach, and he doesn't have the connections to fill his staff. I have a list of positives and negatives to AP. I'll just get to it right now, and then I think we can move on to my next main point here. First, the positives for him. I watched some of the players, post game in the locker room. We're getting asked by the media about Antonio Pierce because obviously his job was on the line, and it was like Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and 1 or 2 other players. And, they were asked like, what do you think of him as a coach, yada, yada, recapping the season sort of. And obviously they're not going to badmouth him, but the tone and what they said was consistent, which was he kept the team together and he kept the team locked in. I would say that's good. Just take away Davante Adams, but I hearing them say that and hearing multiple players say that, specifically Bowers and Jacoby Myers, I realized like, okay, I can see why this was also in hindsight of like the press conference and being like, man, they might keep him. And I was trying to like give myself reasons for why they would. And that was one of them, was like, well, that was the thing last year, was that he brought the team together. So,
Yeah.
They suck. They're in this shitty position with the quarterback. They have so many injuries, right? Which every team gets injuries, but this year actually was fucking horrible for the Raiders injuries. And he's able to keep the team locked in and on the same mission and, week in, week out, the same vibe. That is impressive. and I think I can see why a lot of players appreciate that. Um, Another positive, he's obviously a player's coach. It kind of goes hand in hand. And again, as far as a positive, in the sense that it's not his fault, the bad situation that he was in with, the bad quarterbacks and the injuries plaguing the season. But the negatives, like we said, his connections with coaching staff building, he picked possibly the fucking worst offensive coordinator. The worst, right? And possibly the worst offensive line coach, and possibly the worst quarterback coach. So,
Yeah.
their offense was fucking garbage because of that, in large part, as well as the quarterback situation. So, if somebody wants to blame Tom Telesco for the quarterback situation, sure. But also, having the 13th pick when the last good quarterback worthy of being picked in the first round was picked one pick before them, and every time they wanted to trade it for Jaden Daniels. I fully believe that. Obviously, Washington wasn't going to trade out. They wanted to trade up for Drake May, perhaps. Obviously, the Patriots don't want to trade out. And then it's the second wave of quarterbacks of like the big question marks: Penix, McCarthy, Bo Nix. At that point, it's like, well, we didn't get the big guys worth trading up for. Let's see how it goes. And we'll probably just go best player available. But if a quarterback's there, we'll take him, sure. They went with Bowers. Good pick, right? That looks good for Telesco. I think the reason why Telesco still has his job is because he genuinely brought in talent to this roster. And the reason why Antonio Pierce doesn't have a job is because he didn't do anything with that talent. And his coaching staff didn't do anything with that talent.
Yep.
He made the wrong choice to start the season at quarterback. Another negative. In-game decision-making. Terrible. Terrible. As far as timeouts, kicking field goals, or going for it on fourth down, shit like that, situational stuff, he's not good at it, period. Again, Davante Adams. What the fuck? Like, last offseason, it's like just Max Crosby and Davante Adams riding the Antonio Pierce bull of like, he should be the head coach of this team. And then we come into the season with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, which I'm sure is a big reason why Davante was upset. But it's like, dude, part of the business, like sometimes you can't get the quarterback, and then he's out. And like the next week he's talking to the press conference for the Jets, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, there were things that I was dealing with there that, I didn't talk about, but it was just getting so bad and stuff like that. And it was like, okay, what the fuck does that mean? He was just bad mouthing the Raiders. It's like, damn, dude, you were like all in on AP. Why didn't you go all in on like, actually like, or actually instead of going in all in on anybody, like an offense-minded coach, like you probably should have, just shut the fuck up. Which I have that opinion for Max Crosby too, and there is a tweet out there that I'll have you put up later. To your point earlier, the Raiders regressed this season under Antonio Pierce. That's a big, big no-no for a head coach. Technically in his second, like first and a half season, like he really didn't get just one season. He got like a season and a half. And the fact that it went downward, it's like, that's not good. And again, he's not a proven head coach. He's really just an interim head coach. And he's really just, no offense to him, a linebackers coach, and I will finish off with, like, I don't mean in any way to disrespect him. I highly doubt he's ever going to see this, but, I would just say thank you for a good time in 2023 and revitalizing a season that was clearly lost with a dipshit head coach, a bigger dipshit. Well, shouldn't say bigger. I don't think Antonio Pierce is a dipshit at all.
No.
I just think he's not head coach material. No offense to him. That's all. But I thank him for his time and his service with the team that he grew up loving like I did. So It was a fun story,
I will say he's not head coach material yet. Maybe in the future he can, he can definitely like improve on in-game adjustments and like preparing and building connections within the NFL to get a better coaching staff in the future. Because I'm not just gonna rule him out like for the rest of his career. No, I think that he has a lot of qualities. He's a good motivator. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
He's very likable. It's just I just feel like I don't blame the Raiders for wanting to go in a different direction. I felt like it was time,
Yep.
and I feel like Mark Davis did him a favor by not pulling the plug in the middle of the season, because this season was like very bleak. And really, if you want to think about it, the Raiders probably should have, in order to avoid them beating a team like Jacksonville in order to improve their draft stock, but they didn't,
Yeah.
and I guess I don't know why they chose to keep him, but they did. And, the Antonio Pierce experience, I think, was better than the previous one. But I think that the Raiders are doing the right thing by looking forward for the next era of Raider football.
Yeah, I think I think it was Mark Davis being wise. I know not many people would maybe agree with that statement, but in not firing Antonio Pierce mid-season, it's wise to do that because one, it gives Antonio Pierce the full season to put on his resume, and for Mark Davis to truly sit down and look back on and say, should this guy remain the head coach, yes or no, instead of firing him mid-season. And then the other aspect is, what if Patrick Graham becomes the interim head coach and he kills it? And then you have fucking Max Crosby going, if you don't hire Patrick Graham as the head coach, trade me. Or something like that.
I can almost guarantee, well, I wouldn't even say that I would almost guarantee, but it was clearly a mistake on Max Crosby's part to be so vocal and so drawing a line in the sand between, if AP's not the coach, then I might have to reevaluate my future. Like that's clearly a mistake, and we see it in not just in football. Yeah, not just in football, but there's other instances. Hold on. I'll pull up the tweet, Mike. Hold your horses. But I was listening to Larry Krueger, mention that like essentially the same thing, but on the 49ers side, about how there were certain players who, like Nick Sorensen and wanted him as defensive coordinator. But, he had mentioned that, for the Warriors a couple years ago, they wanted, I guess, Steph, Clay, and Draymond, were really on board with the idea of getting Avery Bradley. And instead, Bob Myers was like, I think we're going to go with Gary Payton II. And they went with Gary Payton II and won a championship, and he was a big part of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to trust whoever's above you to make the best decision. And, what Max Crosby should do is, instead of wanting to be a part of the decision making, see how the Raiders make the decisions on their own. And if they're constantly the wrong decisions, then you reevaluate your future with another organization who's better, But I feel like the moment that you try to overstep, what your job is, it's too many cooks in the kitchen, What's the thing you want me to put on Twitter, Mike?
It's on I sent it to the Silver and Gold Twitter.
It's Vic Tafer?
DM. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see here. I'm going to pull it up. Okay. So do you want to read it?
Sure. Evan asks Vic Tafer and Deshaun Reed, who is going to ask Max Crosby if he regrets threatening to trade if AP was not hired as head coach. I understand the risk involved asking a man of his stature, yada, yada. Vic Tafer responds, he spoke to it on his podcast Monday, so yesterday. Davis didn't like it last year, and Max kept his distance this time. Said it's not his place. Thank God.
Yep.
You hit it on the head when everything happened last offseason of like Devontae and Max putting, their foot down. We need to hire Antonio Pierce, yada, yada, yada. And you were like, this player-led team thing doesn't usually end out well,
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because how long until they start, overruling, the coach when they're not winning, or, when they don't get their way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I
So,
mean, in a way, Devontae kind of did that by demanding a trade anyways.
mhm.
He wasn't in it for the team at that point. It was, no, I want to go win. And then he went to one of the few teams that actually lost more than the Raiders. Actually,
Yeah.
that's not true, but still, damn near, worse situation. But he wanted, I think, it almost just makes it look like he just wanted to catch passes from Aaron Rodgers, from a better quarterback, and
Mhm.
statistically do better, right? Because maybe Devontae at this point is just, if not ring chasing, gold jacket chasing, right? And I can't blame him.
What they did is make me look like a psychic, because I practically predicted something along these lines last year.
Yep.
Just the way the entire thing unfolded. Not to toot my own horn, but like, not to be a psychic, but I feel like a lot of people, could have seen this coming.
Yeah. I'm sending you more tweets
Mhm.
that we can go over. And then what I would like to do is go over the candidates for the Raiders head coaching vacancy. I have 25 of them that we will get into.
Mhm.
So you pulled up this one. This is the one that intrigued me the most, from Josina Anderson. The Raiders have fired head coach Antonio Pierce, per source. I'm told, Josina is told, the Raiders have been continuing to look into at least two candidates in particular that have piqued the interest of ownership behind the scenes. The availability and interest of said prospects was what was causing the delay on an official decision on Antonio Pierce. Now the Raiders have moved on. Who in the hell are these two guys?
I know
I
one
can
of
tell you
them.
who it should be. I can absolutely tell you who it should be,
Okay, tell me who it
because
should be, and then I'll tell you who it is.
I have two guys at the very top of my list by far. It's not even close. The top two coaching candidates, not just for the Raiders, but I think for every team that has a vacancy. It's it is Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, and Mike Vrabel, the ex-Titans head coach.
Mhm.
Those are the top two.
I think Ben Johnson is a better fit. Well, I think he's a better candidate, and here's why. The Raiders need a quarterback. They need to draft a quarterback. He's an offensive-minded head coach, and he's going to make life a lot easier for a young quarterback coming in who doesn't have a lot of NFL experience, to at least have continuity within one offense. If you get Vrabel, he might have an offensive coach, and if they're good, the offensive coach might get hired somewhere else. Then you got to get a new offense, and it's just going to be this like constant revolving door of
Turnover.
different systems, and it'll
Yep.
probably sputter and be a tire fire. That's
Yep.
why I like Mike Vrabel, but
I
like
like
I
him a
feel
lot.
like he can go to a different situation with maybe more of a veteran quarterback that would make a little bit more sense.
Yep.
Do you want to know who I think the two guys are?
I think I think that you think one of
Uh-huh.
them is John Gruden.
Okay. And who's the other one?
You don't think it's Ben Johnson?
No. That's not who I'm thinking right now.
Is it an offensive guy?
Yeah.
Uh, Offensive guy. Ooh. Oh, well, I'll just throw this one out there. Cliff Kingsbury.
No.
Okay.
Although, he is interesting, but I think the Raiders clearly, it's John Gruden, and the other one is a name maybe you haven't heard of. He's kind of a new guy, but Juan Grudeño.
Yeah. It's either Juan Grudeno or Grudeno, or it's Leon Sandcastle.
Yeah.
I
No,
heard a
I'm just
report that they have requested an interview with Leon Sandcastle.
yeah. My joke was so bad that we lost all our viewers, by the way.
Very
No,
good.
I'm just kidding.
Very nice. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, Gruden is theoretically an option.
I don't think The reason why I don't think that Gruden is realistically, going to be one of the candidates is because you don't typically see third time head coaches. I do think that Ben Johnson is an option. I just don't know what the Raiders would have to do besides just open the bank in order to incentivize him to come.
Right.
I don't know if it's like, hey, you're going to be working with Tom Brady. You're going to be working with Tom Telesco, who has this track record of drafting very good. You're going to be in this good system. You're going to make your entire paycheck over here in Nevada. Like, that could be it. And then you'll have your pick at quarterback. Whatever you want to do. We love your creativity on offense. We'll do it. I do think there is merit to maybe your two, top choices. I do want to say, though, while I don't think that John Gruden will be coming back to the Raiders, I do think John Gruden will be a head coach in the NFL again. I feel like people have already gotten over the whole cancellation thing and like the emails to Goodell and, the public outcry. There'll be some people that, will never forget it. Right. But like, I feel like enough time has passed and Gruden's stock right now is up, man. Him going with Barstool Sports and doing all the TikToks and all the stuff on social media, like Gruden has like rebuilt his like profile as a personality in football. So I think there'll be at least a team or two who is interested in interviewing John Gruden.
Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely see this offseason how that goes because there has been reports that teams have apparently reached out to him. I sent you 2 more tweets, and then I think I'm done sending you tweets. But
Okay.
part of the reason why Mike Vrabel makes sense to me is because of the tweet that I sent you with a picture of Mr. Tom Brady.
Okay. You want me to do the one of Mr. Tom Brady?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
From Adam Schefter. Raiders limited owner Tom Brady is expected to be a part of a collaborative committee to interview head coaching candidates and support team owner Mark Davis, per league sources. There's been consistent reporting and rumors, whatever you want to call it, that Tom Brady's going to have an effect, potentially a big effect, on the hiring of this new head coach. And if you want to look for connections to Tom Brady, Mike Vrabel would absolutely be one of them. And he's like, I think the main positive with Vrabel is not only is he a head coaching candidate, one of the few head coaching candidates with serious head coaching experience, it's also serious, successful head coaching experience. Yes, John Gruden won a Super Bowl, but like after that, is it really that successful? Not really. I know that Mike Vrabel finished out with the Titans on like a little bit of a losing streak or whatever you want to call it. But for the most part, he had them as a top 3 seed in the AFC with Ryan Tannehill. Right? Like imagine him with a quarterback and a stud defense to pair with it. Like the Titans never had the quarterback. They just had a guy that could get the job done. And that's all it took for Mike Vrabel. Imagine if they could get that veteran, say it's wishful thinking, but Sam Darnold or even Justin Fields, if he could somehow get the job done, right? And then the defense gets better because they already have talent. And then eventually they get the quarterback. If they're winning and he's proving why he's a good head coach in this league, man, I fully believe he can do that.
I think the Raiders are the betting favorite to land Aaron Rodgers.
Fuck. I think he should retire. From what I could tell, when I would watch Jets games, he wasn't throwing the ball deep, which is a telltale sign that he's beginning or already has a noodle arm. And I don't want that. I think one thing that got better this season for the Raiders offense was deep passing, with Scott Turner. And that was the point Antonio Pierce made in the press conference. I need that, and I need play action. I need I need the run game to be better. And I think if you have this weak-armed quarterback who's, he's good at processing, but he's not the same guy he used to be. He just led the Jets to a fucking 4 or 5 win season. I'm good because the Raiders might be a worse team than the Jets, like talent-wise, right now. So why would I expect Aaron Rodgers to do any better? And in part because I don't even know who the offensive coordinator will be.
Mhm.
I'd rather not pay for him. I'd rather pay for other players that can develop with us and just look towards the future at quarterback.
You wouldn't be interested, though, if it was Ben Johnson and Aaron Rodgers, like a good offensive-minded head coach, instead of like Nathaniel Hackett and then Nathaniel Hackett's, backup or whatever.
Right. Ben Johnson would get me intrigued for Aaron Rodgers for sure. And then in theory, they could draft, this is really crazy thinking here, but they could draft Ashton Gianti at 6. And it's just like, well, everything's kind of fixed now. Not really, but kind of, right?
Dude, just imagine. The Raiders could, all right, if Aaron Rodgers comes here, I bet you a guy like Davante Adams would be interested in coming here.
I think if Rodgers is playing next year, Davante Adams is a package deal, which is part of the reason why I don't expect Davante or Rodgers to be with the Raiders. If anything, funny enough, I think the Titans might make sense because I want to say Rodgers already has a home in Tennessee and they need a quarterback. So he could be the starter that helps develop the young quarterback, that they draft first overall. And they get Davante Adams to pair with Calvin Ridley, yada, yada, yada. It could work. They have the running backs. They have a solid offensive line. They've built the team. Their quarterback's play was that bad. What's his face? Mayonnaise loving guy. He was that bad.
Will Levis.
Yeah. But yeah, I'd say as far as Mike Vrabel, I'm not really in on many defensive coordinator or defensive minded head coaches because what I want above all, and after this right here, we can get into my list of the candidates for the Raiders head coaching position. And then we can finally move on. What the Raiders need most is consistency, continuity, and they need to develop a winning culture and a winning program. And if you get Mike Vrabel as the head coach, you will do most of that. But because the offensive coordinator is the offensive coordinator and not the head coach, if we do develop the winning program that I would expect Mike Vrabel to develop, and whether it's a veteran quarterback or a rookie quarterback, if they are successful, the offensive coordinator will eventually leave to be a head coach. And then your continuity and your consistency has a very high likelihood of not continuing. I don't want that. I think Mark Davis realizes that that's what they need. They need a consistent quarterback. They need a consistent coach. They need a consistent GM. They need the entire franchise to be in fucking lockstep because they haven't been in lockstep since at least 2003. That's what they need. And the best teams, if you want to compare and contrast, the best teams in the league have that. The Ravens, the Chiefs, the Packers. They have those things. And they're always in the fucking playoffs. That's what they need. So that's why I'm glad that they fired Antonio Pierce, because waiting another year, if you can pull up my other tweet just to further my reasoning for firing him this season, you keep him another year, it's like if it doesn't work out, we're just pushing back that consistency and continuity another year. Hire the right guy. And if you don't hire the right guy, find another one. But
yeah,
more reasons to fire him. He went 0-6 in the division this year. Week 2 against the Ravens, impressive. Other than that, they beat a bunch of backups and shitty teams. So again, him saying I was proud of the way the team finished. Yeah, any given Sunday, but I'm not impressed by beating the Saints without Derek Carr, Chris Olave, Alvin Kamara, and beating the Jags without Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, and probably multiple other starting players for them. I'm not impressed. Not one bit. I'm impressed by Brock Bowers. I'm impressed by Jacoby Myers, Robert Spillane. That's it. As Isaiah Polamau, Trevon Merrick. That's it. Maybe Jackson Powers Johnson. I thought he developed pretty good as it went on. You know, but that's about it. Like, I'm not impressed by the overall team, because if I was impressed by the team, I would have saw progression, not regression. So that's that
Yeah,
with Antonio Pierce.
the defense got a little worse. The the running game was non-existent, and it was kind of a circus at quarterback. I think we can, kind of be a little bit honest about it. It was,
Oh yeah, yeah. That's I think, for as unlucky and situational as Antonio Pierce's situation was because of the quarterback fiasco, also the Raiders quarterback fiasco was situational and unlucky because they had the one pick right behind all the other quarterbacks going. And in free agency, they went with a guy that's like, I don't know if they had the intent to draft a quarterback or trade up for a quarterback or what, but they went with a veteran that they thought, yeah, he can win games if like our defense is really good and our offensive line holds up and the offense is mastered. Well, none of that shit fucking happened. And we couldn't run the ball. Whatever the dipshit's name that was our hired offensive coordinator to start this year,
Luke Getsy.
The main focal point in his offense is to run the ball. That was the worst thing that they did this year. They were the worst in the league at running the football.
Probably by far.
By far. So, yeah, it's just, yeah. So, they need, in my opinion, an offensive-minded head coach moving forward. At some point, probably not this year, but hopefully, but at some point, you get that quarterback in there to pair with that coach. And until then, you see progression, you see development. Tom Telesco continues to bring in great talent for the coaching staff, hopefully a good coaching staff, to develop. And you keep progressing, and you keep getting better. And then you get that quarterback, and it's go time. So let's get into the candidates.
All right. Who are your candidates?
Number 1, Ben Johnson. Number 2, Mike Vrabel, right?
Yeah.
I've already said that. And then I segmented it by sort of what kind of coaches they are. Number 3 and 4 are, I'd say, pretty far and away above most of the others. Number 3 is Liam Cohen, the Buccaneers offensive coordinator. Number 4 is Joe Brady, the Bills offensive coordinator. By the way, this segment of 6 offensive coordinators are what I call the young offensive coordinators. This is the young up-and-coming coaching candidates that hopefully have a good pulse on the future of offense in the NFL. Liam Cohen, Joe Brady. Mike Kafka, the New York Giants assistant head coach and offensive coordinator. He has been in the head coaching candidate mills for the past multiple seasons, getting interviews from teams like the Texans, I think the Cardinals. He's in there, and now he's an assistant head coach. He's developing, it seems, as a coach. So I can see it. I know the Giants are nothing to be like super proud of, and the whole Daniel Jones fiasco makes it look pretty bad because he's also a quarterback-centric coach. He used to coach with the Chiefs as a quarterbacks coach with Patrick Mahomes. And again, Daniel Jones looks pretty bad, right? But regardless, he's a candidate. Adam Stenavich, number 6, the Packers offensive coordinator. He's an offensive line. He has an offensive line background. He's been the offensive coordinator with the Packers, I believe, for the last 3 years. And from what I was reading, as far as like, future coaching candidates, he's a very up-and-coming coach that has a lot of respect around the league. Number 7.
Real quick, we do have we have a lot of questions in the comments, but I do want to get to this one in particular. We will get to the other ones just after this topic. But Nick has a very relevant question about Mike Vrabel, who's one of your candidates. Nick says, haven't we already seen what Mike Vrabel can do, though? Thoughts on Marcus Freeman?
Yeah, it's funny. I had Marcus Freeman on like my candidates list, and I took him off earlier tonight, in part because I started adding more names. And I was like, I haven't seen any team that I know of request to interview Marcus Freeman, but also, actually, he's not that young. I think he's like 39, but he's the head coach of Notre Dame. At least I hope I'm right on that. And I don't see why he would leave that, you know? Um, but if an NFL team sways him, perhaps he does leave that, right? It's just, I think he's pretty successful right now. But I really don't know what to think because I don't watch Notre Dame, to be honest with you.
Yeah. My thing about Mike Vrabel, and I think Mike kind of touched on this, is that, Vrabel, I think he never had the quarterback. And I think Mike is under the assumption that if Vrabel was hired, the Raiders would eventually get the quarterback. That's my thing, though. Since he's not an offensive-minded head coach, are you really going – I mean, I guess it's two good people to rely on based on the track record, but you would have to essentially give it all entirely to Tom Brady and Tom Telesco to figure out, who is going to be the quarterback, because they can pick a right guy that can be molded, but is Mike Vrabel going to be the coach that is going to be able to, get that quarterback, fully developed, meet his full potential, and be the franchise guy going forward? I think that's probably the reason why most of the people on Mike's list right now is, are offensive minded, upcoming, sort of candidates.
Yeah. I think with Mike Vrabel, like, in my opinion of Mike Vrabel, what we have already seen of him is winning in this league with a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill. I was going to say Matt Ryan, and then I was going to say Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Tannehill. And then I think, honestly, if you really look back, I think that the Titans failed Mike Vrabel, specifically their general manager at the time, trading a guy like A.J. Brown because of a contract dispute, And I remember to this day watching the live reaction from Mike Vrabel in the Titans war room when he got the news that, we're trading A.J. Brown. He was just shaking his head, putting his head down like, what the fuck, And I think the next year he got fired. He had a winner there, and then they just tore it all down. So,
Yeah, Nick says he has the locker room. Young and his ceiling is enormous. Thanks for answering, gents. Yeah, no, thank you for tuning into the show and sharing your comments. And thank you, 49er Media and Danny's Cowboy Nation in the house. We will get to your guys' comments too after the topic, or if you guys want to add to what we're talking about right now,
I'll add, just off of the idea of Marcus Freeman, I hope is his name. I'm sorry for not fully knowing it. I think I'd like one of two things. Like we showed the report from Josina Anderson that they have two guys in mind. And that was a big reason why they fired Antonio Pierce, was because, at least without her really saying it, like, their availability was big on them firing Antonio Pierce. So if they have two guys in mind, they need to be fast with getting the interviews in, doing the Rooney Rule, and then hiring one of those guys, because the Patriots are already there, right? And I think based off of reports and stuff and who they've interviewed, the Patriots' top two candidates are my top two candidates. And I think that they have fast-tracked their ability to hire one of those guys, right? So point being here, I would like the Raiders to do one of two things: either fast-track and get your fucking guy, or interview everybody, including a Marcus Freeman and many of these guys on this list. And hopefully you find a guy that you're just like, wow, man, like, he sticks out like a sore thumb in a good way. Like, that is the guy. And hopefully you can hire him, which is part of my worry with Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel is obviously they're going to be hot commodities, and if I'm being completely honest, the Raiders are not the best coaching candidacy or vacancy this offseason. The Bears have a former number 1 overall pick. The Patriots have Drake May, number 3 overall pick. They have their quarterbacks in place. A guy like Ben Johnson can go in there and be like, this is great. I can just build the roster around this guy, you know? Whereas the Raiders, it's like, yeah, we're sitting at 6th overall, and we don't think we're going to get a quarterback there. Also, the quarterback class isn't that good, so we're probably waiting another year. Look at what just happened to Antonio Pierce doing that. You know, it just stuff like that, right? And the quarterbacks that they have on the roster right now, it's like, ooh. So, you know, it's an interesting candidacy or vacancy, but probably not as interesting as I would say the Patriots.
I think Mark Davis has to take a look at what went wrong last year, you know, because I do see Nick in the, you know, Nick, I don't want to mispronounce the last name, but Nick S says, you guys can root for my Chargers in the playoffs. I think I do love Harbaugh. So, you know, as a 49er fan, I love Harbaugh. I think Mark Davis needs to look at what went wrong last year in not going as aggressively on Jim Harbaugh. You know, we've talked at numerous lengths about it, but whatever you can do to get Ben Johnson, because he is the top candidate, whatever you can do money wise, there's no salary cap on coaches. Spend the most money that you can to get the best coaches. There's no excuse not to. Unless Tom Brady's like, yeah, you know what? Ben Johnson's a fraud. I think that's a mistake. Ben Johnson clearly shows creativity every single week. It's like a new player gets you know, there's a brand new play that's like, it just blows everybody away. Ben Johnson might quite literally be an offensive genius, you know?
Yeah.
Like of course, he has the right personnel to do it, and the players have bought into the head coach. But, you know, if he right now, for the first time in his career, is getting noticed for the talent that he has, you know, that he possesses as an offensive play caller. I feel like one of the best things that an offensive coach can have is creativity. And he is leaking with it. It's, you know, absolutely every single week you see it. How many offensive linemen have scored touchdowns or like, you know, gotten the ball and attempted a pass? Like it's actually crazy, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that by itself makes a good head coach, but the Lions, when they don't score 40 points in a week, it's like, what kind of happened there? You almost expect them to drop 40 on whoever they're playing. And I think they were playing one of the top defenses last week. How did they do? Hold on. Lions versus Vikings. Right now, another big head coaching candidate should be the Vikings defensive coordinator. Is it Brian Flores?
Yeah,
he should be another head coaching candidate. And the Lions dropped 31 points. You know?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, when the 49ers, with a supposed offensive genius at head coach, you know, they struggle against, you know, a guy like Brian Flores. I mean, obviously personnel is different, but last year the 49ers were running the table and had, you know, and struggled against Brian Flores. Do you want to maybe get to him right now on your list, or maybe get to a couple, you know, whoever you have in front of him?
Yeah, I'll just keep going with the list. I mean, he's pretty close here. Like really after, well, okay, I said Mike LaFleur, the Rams offensive coordinator. And again, like this is in the young offensive coordinators bracket of guys who have like 1 to 3 years of offensive coordinator experience in the NFL. And you know, that was a guy like Kevin O'Connell a couple years ago. Not to say that any of these guys will become Kevin O'Connell, the next Kevin O'Connell, but a guy like Liam Cohen, who just, the Buccaneers offense this year was absolutely fantastic, you know, and Baker Mayfield, like he lost, was it Rosales, the head coach for the Panthers? Is that his last name? Canales.
No, Canales. Dave Canales.
he loses Dave Canales, and he was like the QB guru, right? Kind of the hot name for QB guru, young offensive minded coach. And they bring in Liam Cohen from Kentucky, formerly of the Rams. And I would say Baker Mayfield like progressed. He didn't regress. He got better this year.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a Baker thing, but clearly their offense was doing something right because statistically they're like very high up in many facets. And I just wanted to bring him back up just because I don't want to glance over them. Like I want to give a couple of reasons. Like Joe Brady, I want to say the Bills had the number 2 pass and rush offense this year in the league. Like, that's impressive. And the one sort of sketchy thing with him is like he's coming off of being the interim offensive coordinator, and then they kept him. But before that, he was with the Panthers and I believe with LSU, and he was like prolific at LSU in part because I want to say that might have been Burrow. I could be wrong there, but he's a up and coming offensive mind, and that's been my quintessential idea of what the Raiders hired, right? And then the final name in this bracket is Kellen Moore, the Eagles offensive coordinator. The next bracket is, I think, the other option for the Raiders, other than the top 2, which Mike Vrabel kind of falls in line with this. And then I'd say Ben Johnson falls in line with the young offensive coordinators. The next bracket is coaches with previous NFL head coaching experience. And from this point on, it's really not in any particular order. I'm just going to go offense and then defense. Cliff Kingsbury, John Gruden, Frank Reich, former Colts and Carolina Panthers head coach. And then on defense, you have Brian Flores, who I've been back and forth on. When I convinced myself in having a defensive-minded head coach like Mike Vrabel, Brian Flores is usually my third favorite candidate because I think he fits, and I think he would have this defense fucking humming, and you just hope that the offense figures it out. But I don't know, what he would do with the coaching staff on offense. I don't know what he would do at quarterback. There's been some things between him and Tua. I'm not sure. So, I'd probably lean a guy like Liam Cohen and Joe Brady, maybe even Mike Kafka. But Brian Flores is a hot name for me. And then continuing with the defensive-minded candidates that have head coaching experience, Steve Spagnuolo, Chiefs defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator, former Broncos head coach. Or Chargers? I'm tripping. I want to say Broncos.
I'm still stuck on the Spagnuolo thing. He's not going to be the head coach of the Raiders simply because there's no way he would leave Kansas City in order to stay in the same division.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's going to leave Kansas City, period. Why would he want to leave the greatest quarterback of the generation with one of the best head coaches he can have so much hardware and then become a head coach if he wants to after their prime is done.
Yeah.
Once they start to go downhill, he'll still be like one of the top candidates, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons for him not to even seek a head coaching job or just decline offers, 15, again, not really in any particular order anymore, but Ejiro Evero, the Panthers defensive coordinator, he's got head coaching experience, albeit I think interim coaching experience, so it's not really that big, but he's an up-and-coming name. And then now I got 2 defensive coordinators. If the Raiders want to go the defensive route, you have all the names that I've mentioned so far. You could throw in Aaron Glenn, the Lions defensive coordinator, very hot name, and Anthony Weaver, Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. Another name of a guy who's getting a lot of interviews this round, this wave.
Yeah, you can throw in Nick Sorensen too. He's available.
Or what about the other, the former Chargers head coach?
Yeah, Brandon Staley. He still has not been fired, and we do have a question about that. So we will get to it.
We'll get to it soon. Yeah, I'll be done soon. And then my last bracket of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 coaching candidates, I just called the miscellaneous group. You have Bobby Slowick, who a year ago was a hot name because the Texans offense just blew up and Stroud looked so good and yada, yada, yada. But now they regressed, and it's like, I don't really know there,
I'm not
Frank
as big on
Smith-
Bobby Slowick as I was.
No, I'm really not. I think if they hired him, it'd be a mistake. Frank Smith, Dolphins offensive coordinator. This is a guy who last year, when I started looking into candidates, I really liked the idea of, but also the Dolphins. I get weird vibes from the way that their offense played, specifically when Tua wasn't on the field. Like, in my opinion, I don't think Tua is that big of a game changer to where they should suck without him. Like, they should be drastically different. Like, they have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and the running backs. How are you not scoring points? And you have you have at least one, offensive mastermind, and they just would suck without Tua. So I'm like, I don't think I want anybody from the Dolphins offense if they can't get it together.
One, typically that is a telltale sign that the offensive line is not very good. Two, it can also tell you, from what we saw from the Dolphins this year, they were not utilizing their top weapons. They didn't utilize Tyreek Hill. And then Jalen Waddle just got swept under the rug in exchange for Jonnu Smith. Like, Jonnu Smith should be the complementary. He should be the complementary player.
Yeah.
And instead it was vice versa. So I don't know what happened there, if that was a McDaniel thing, but right now they are a dumpster fire at this moment because of the whole Tyreek Hill drama.
I could go in on that, but I won't. But Tyreek's an idiot. Next at 20, I have Todd Monken, Ravens offensive coordinator. I don't see it. Really, all these guys, I don't see it. He's got so much coaching, experience, but he's never touched a head coaching job, which tells me he's just not the material, And that could very well be for a lot of these guys, even guys named above. At 21, I have David Shaw, former Stanford head coach. He was there for 11 years. He was pretty successful, but then fell off at the end and he resigned. He's been here and there, like ESPN. Actually, he's a personnel guy with the Broncos now. He's always been in the coaching, rumors. He gets interviews, probably, no offense, to, do the Rooney Rule, right? Never gets hired.
The Rooney Rule is so flawed. It is so flawed.
Yeah.
It almost feels racist that they're forcing, teams to just, interview candidates just because they're black. Like, one, that sort of gives off the vibe or the notion that, there aren't just black candidates that are good anyway, because there are.
Oh yeah.
And then two, I mean, look, we saw the Patriots today interview Byron Leftwich and who was the other guy? I can almost guarantee they're not going to hire them.
Pep Hamilton.
I can almost guarantee they're not even interested in hiring them.
Yep.
If they do, I would be shocked. But to me, it just seems like, they're just trying to bypass the Rooney Rule every single year. It's like everybody groans. It's like, oh, the Rooney Rule. I don't know. There's plenty of great black coaches that can, I don't think that the Rooney Rule is set up in a way to where more teams are going to hire, coaches. I do like that there's more interviews being conducted, but like, I think the perfect way of getting more black coaches hired is exactly what the 49ers were doing over the past couple of years. Is like Kyle Shanahan had Robert Saleh demonstrate how great of a coach he is. Obviously, he didn't last with the Jets, but he's still a great coach. He had that defense looking, fantastic. They were like one of the top defenses in the league before he got hired. And then after he got hired, they completely dropped off. And then D'Amico Ryans. D'Amico Ryans has done a hell of a job with the Texans. Nobody thought that they were going to be good last year. And look, I mean, they made the playoffs last year, right, Mike?
Yeah, the Texans.
Texans made the playoffs the past 2 years now, back-to-back years. And that's because Kyle Shanahan, you know, I mean, really, there has to be more teams like the 49ers to, you know, give coaches opportunities. And, you know, I don't know. It's that I feel like that is the most effective way to get more black coaches hired is to
Right.
give them more
Properly
opportunities to, you know, be properly developed, play with good talent, and, you know, demonstrate their abilities. Because, I mean, D'Amico Ryans and Robert Saleh, fantastic. Even Steve Wilkes wasn't that bad last year, you know?
Mm.
So I don't know. I just know that everybody dislikes the Rooney Rule.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be changed.
Yeah. All right. Final four names. Kind of a joke here. Bill O'Brien, if you want a connection to Tom Brady, but a guy that I just don't fucking want. And then I have three more names, although this first one is a complete joke, and the last two are two guys that I refuse to have as the Raiders head coach next year. For number 23, I have any former Arroyo High School football head coach. At number 24, I have Dennis Allen. And at number 25, I have Deion Sanders. If the Raiders hired Deion Sanders, you will watch, if you do watch this podcast, you will watch a bitter Raider fan who knows that he's going to fail miserably. So I don't like his, I don't like the way he goes about business. I'll just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't think he's built to be a head coach in the NFL, at least not yet. He should go through the proper, how do you say, development of, you know, I don't even know if he's an offensive or defensive guy. Obviously,
Deion?
he played defense. Yeah, obviously he's a defensive player, so he should be a cornerback coach, and then he should be a, you know, defensive pass game coordinator, and then defensive coordinator, and then he's proven that he could be a head coach in the NFL.
I think, all right, so here's my thing with Deion Sanders. Obviously, he's a liked and well-respected, you know, figure in the NFL. You know, he's a Hall of Fame player. You know, I think my thing about Deion Sanders as a NFL head coaching candidate is you know, you were even struggling to figure out what he was most known for in college. Obviously, the answer should be defense, but I don't pay that close attention to college football. I really hardly even watch college football, right? From the outside looking in, I just know that Colorado is always trending because of Deion and not so much of the actual football that's being played.
Yep.
And so it's just, it almost seems like more of a theatrical, you know, kind of, he brings all this attention to get these players highly scouted. You know, it's definitely benefited his son Shedeur, who, you know, I haven't watched a lot of, you know, Shedeur Sanders. It's benefited Travis Hunter, who is going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL. But I just don't know if Deion is going to be a serious head coaching candidate in the National Football League, you know?
Yeah. So I want to get this right. Shedeur Sanders began his college football career, I'm reading this off of all places, Wikipedia, with the Jackson State Tigers, winning the Jerry Rice Award and Deacon Jones Trophy before transferring to Colorado, where he won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award in 2024.
Mm-hmm.
He's the youngest son of Deion Sanders. So he went from Jackson State in 2021 to 2022 to Colorado in 2023 to 2024. He transferred, right? Went through the transfer portal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let me search up Deion Sanders. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Tell me.
He started coaching. Let's go to coaching career. Gotta scroll down a little bit. Damn. Okay, he started coaching in high school. Looks like stayed as the head coach in 2012, 2013. School was shut down in 2015 amid a spate of problems, whatever that means. 2017 became the offensive coordinator for Trinity Christian High School, giving him the opportunity to coach his sons Shiloh and Shadur Sanders, along with his eldest son, Dion Jr. In 2020, Dion Sanders became the 21st head coach of the Jackson State Tigers. Jackson State University. How do you say it? His first season in 2021. And then in 2022, Sanders notably flipped the recruitment of defensive back Travis Hunter, who was the number 1 overall recruit in the 2022 class. Hunter initially committed to Sanders' alma mater, Florida State. The move was heralded by recruiting, blah, blah, blah. Hunter was, Jesus, fuck. Basically, Travis Hunter went to Jackson State. Sanders led Jackson State to a 27-6 record during his 3 seasons at the helm. Great. 2023, Deion Sanders becomes the head coach of Colorado. Sanders made extensive use of the transfer portal in replacing nearly the Buffalo's entire roster, with 46 players leaving in the transfer portal and 50 transferring in. 9 followed him from Jackson State, including sons Shadur, Shiloh, and of course, Travis Hunter. After going 1-11 in the previous season, Colorado won the first 3 games in 2023. I remember this. It was very popular. It was like, oh my God, he's doing it. And then they lost their next 2. Yada, yada. They finished 4-8, 1-8 record in the Pac-12. And then, of course, you have this season where they actually had a winning record and stuff, good stuff. But he has talented players. It's just interesting to me. And this is this isn't really a knock on Deion. I get it, man. It's your son. But this is my knock on Shadur. And granted, he won the awards that I noted. Like, he is talented. It's just funny looking that, like, he transfers to Colorado and it's like no questions asked, he's a starting quarterback. Because his dad's a head coach. It always rubbed me the wrong way. That's why I was Cam Ward all the way to start the season. And then as the season progressed, it's like, all right, maybe Shadur is better. Cool. Like, if that works, cool. If he wants to be a Raider, I'm down for it. If he's really that good, I don't care who it is. I want what's best for the Raiders. That's all that matters. But he's utilizing the transfer portal because he's Deion fucking Sanders. And I do remember on Twitter when he first went to Colorado, a lot of former Colorado players that were trying to stay were very upset with the way that he handled the roster, turnover. Basically telling guys, get the fuck out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that. I didn't like it. But I don't need to go on a tirade about Deion Sanders. I just hope that he's not the head coach. But with my luck, because I have him at the very bottom of the list, he will be a finalist in our coaching candidacy. Watch. And why would he be a finalist? Tom Brady is close with Shadur, one way or another. And if they somehow think that they could pull it off, they might think that getting Deion as the head coach and having Shadur in whatever way tell teams, I'm not playing for you, they might think that they could pair the two again in the NFL. Yeah, it's a circus.
Yeah, Nick says Colorado, or it's a circus at Colorado. That's kind of how I feel on the outside looking in. Like I said, I don't pay enough attention to college football to really tell you. But, like to me, there's just so many college teams. And it's like, I don't know. I'm perfectly happy paying attention to the NFL and like local high school, football.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly just say that I have 3 offensive coordinator options in mind, but it kind of doesn't matter because it depends on who the head coach is. Clint Kubiak probably won't stay with the Saints because they're getting a new head coach. He was a top option for the Raiders last year, but the Niners were in the Super Bowl, so they couldn't wait for him. So they did the whole Kingsbury fiasco, and then they went with their 4th option or whatever. But they missed out on getting a chance at Kubiak, and then boom, he's a Saint like that. If he's out there this year, maybe they could try for him. Brian Johnson, Washington's assistant head coach and pass game coordinator, and Davis Webb, Denver's quarterbacks coach. Other than that, I am finally done with this topic. I'm so sorry for taking so long,
No,
but that's
you're
where I'm
all
at
good.
right now with the Raiders.
We're finally going to take the comments in the that you guys have been so patiently waiting. Danny's Cowboys Nation in the house says, "Hey guys, pray for me in Santa Monica, California, Pacific Palisades. They're about to evacuate us in this crucial time. I'm sending prayers to you and to everybody who's in Santa Monica. Don't let us distract you from any evacuation. We appreciate you for tuning into the stream and taking time out of your day to comment." Danny says, "I've never been through a wildfire before, guys. First time ever. This is something crazy I have never been through. Is this something that you guys have you guys been through it?"
Never an evacuation. We've had wildfires, somewhat nearby. Like we had the big one in Napa,
Mhm.
and I don't know if you remember like the sky being orange and stuff, but
Yeah.
never to the
I
point.
remember.
Yeah, but never to the point where we were getting evacuated because it was close to us. That's always a scary situation. I remember Paradise, and it seems like every year Greater Los Angeles has a fucking fire. It's like, dude. Ugh,
Yeah.
not
If
good.
you live in the Los Angeles area, stay safe. Well, really, I encourage everybody to stay safe, but, especially those who might be affected by the fires. In terms of evacuations that I've been through, obviously, we told the story about last Sunday. Well, not 2 days ago, but, the week before, we had to evacuate because of a gas leak. But, that's obviously, that didn't last as long as I think these evacuations are going to last. And,
Yeah.
in
Plus, it
terms
ended
of
up being
fire,
nothing.
never been affected by a wildfire personally. But, back 11 years ago, almost 11 years ago now, my dad's house did burn down of some sort of, electrical fire. So, there was that. And, that was obviously a difficult time. So, I really hope that everybody's able to make it out safe. And, I hope everybody has a place to go, and stay if they do, lose their house, lose their belongings. It's an awful situation to be in. So, I'm definitely sending my prayers, and I thank you for still taking time out to tune into the show. 49er Media says, question for you when you get to talking about the 49ers. Do you think we fire Brandon Staley? We're not necessarily on the 49ers topic yet, but I will say they should fire Brandon Staley because, it's hard to really tell what exactly in the defense he is responsible for. But if they're firing Nick Sorensen and this is supposed to be like a two-headed duo, I don't know. Like, all right, he was technically the assistant head coach, and maybe a defensive consultant. I know for a fact he was assistant head coach, and he led meetings, or at least I've heard that he was leading meetings every single week about ball security and takeaways, so if his, I guess, sole responsibility was to preach about taking the ball away and protecting the football, and the 49ers lost the turnover battle most of the times this season, and we're not, turning the ball over on defense, what exactly has he done to earn, staying? He didn't do good with the Chargers. He wasn't very liked by the players. He wasn't liked by the fans. And I've already talked about 49er fans just talking about, please, God, do not promote Brandon Staley to defensive coordinator. Right now, in our inner circle of friends, we have a Charger fan who's a friend in our group chat, and he's like, please 49ers hire Brandon Staley as defensive coordinator. And because he's firsthand had to witness what Brandon Staley can do to a football team. And I don't know, to me, I'm not interested. So
I mean, if
I
we're
don't
being
know
honest,
exactly what he offers.
yeah. Yeah, well, this is probably for the next topic, but man, Robert Saleh would be a get, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Imagine him with the 49er defense.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
Yep. They might just mess around and go to a Super Bowl or something. Nick says everybody should fire Brandon Staley. Yeah. See, Nick is a Charger fan in here,
Yeah.
So he firsthand does not think that Brandon Staley is worth it. Jonathan Martinez, welcome to the show, says 1,000,000% was the correct move moving on from Antonio Pierce. I agree. Man is not cut out to be a head coach. I would say he's not cut out yet. I know he's not going to get any head coaching experience not being a head coach, but it's like he does possess qualities that you like. He doesn't have the connections, clearly didn't have the quarterbacks, or really didn't make the right decision at quarterback this year. But, Antonio Pierce, I think, probably, good guy who, I mean, it's okay. Not everybody is going to be a head coach in the NFL. He had an opportunity and, the team regressed under his full off season. So Jonathan says
I could see him being a good college head coach, like a Deion Sanders.
he was a college coach, right? Wasn't he the coach at Arizona State?
I don't remember if he was head coach or defensive coordinator, but regardless, he was properly building his resume in college. That's part of the reason why I say, he makes sense for college, but we'll see. Rooting for him.
Yeah. Jonathan says AP staying an extra year. Don't matter if the Raiders did get Sanders, 4 to 6 win season regardless.
Yeah, as long as their quarterback situation is tumultuous, the record will probably also be tumultuous.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take time to build that winning consistency.
Mm-hmm. Nick says, "Yep, the Rooney Rule is a joke." Yeah, it's every single year. It's every single year. Jonathan says Raiders should trade with the Vikings and take JJ McCarthy, pick number 6, second round and third round pick.
It might take some singing crazy deal like that for the Vikings to part with him. But they did the 9th pick last year for him, and he didn't play in the regular season at all, and Darnold did good. Like, in my opinion, I think I've said this before, but I don't see the Vikings moving on from either quarterback. I think they keep both, and they kind of treat it like the Packers of like, if the veteran ain't broke, don't fix it. Meanwhile, the young guy that we drafted to be the future of this franchise will continue to develop and learn. And that's probably the wisest way for them to go about it, especially if, like, say Darnold gets hurt week 2. It's like, have fun with your first round pick next May. You guys are you were almost the 1 seed this year. So, if they blunder that next year, it's like, wow, what a lost season for them. So they should continue developing their quarterbacks. And I would say for the Raiders, I would only make the trade if it's only the first round pick. Maybe you throw in like a 4th round pick. I'm not giving up a 2nd or a 3rd. No way. Not with the way this roster is currently built.
Do you remember me, Mike, earlier this year saying that the Raiders should make an offer for Bryce Young? Bryce Young is finally looking good.
And I want to say I agreed. Like, it wouldn't have hurt, especially if like they were so out that it was like it only took like a 2nd round pick. Oh man.
Yeah.
Granted, part of the quarterback fiasco for the Raiders is the coaching staff. Scott Turner did better, but like, if I think any quarterback, I gave the example of Bo Nix earlier coming to this team with fucking the offensive coordinator that they hired, who I forget his name because I don't like him. The quarterback wouldn't have succeeded, period. They couldn't run the ball. He wouldn't have been developed properly. It would have been just a lost year regardless. I don't care how good the quarterback is. You have to have the right coaching in there.
Yep. Jonathan says, unfortunately, the Giants are taking Sanders. They're going to ruin his rookie season. Yeah, I don't even know if the Giants are really a big fan of Shador Sanders, because I've been seeing rumors saying that like a lot of league executives sort of feel that Shador Sanders isn't even really a first round pick. So like we talked about Colorado getting all this attention because of Deion Sanders being the head coach. I feel like that's part of it. We just constantly hear about Shador Sanders. Is he really a generational player? Like,
He's a solid quarterback prospect. I mentioned the awards that he has won in college. Like, he's solid. And he might even be a solid NFL quarterback. But to one degree or another, I believe there's a little bit of baggage to him. And I think that his eventual draft placement, whether it's first, second, third, fourth overall, is because a quarterback needy team needs to pick a quarterback. And not because he should be the first, second, third, or fourth pick. Maybe in reality, he should be like the 15th pick,
Ham keeps saying PG, 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 for Patrick Graham, I'm assuming, not Paul George.
Yeah, I left Patrick Graham off the list. What I'd like for PG is to get hired by the Jacksonville Jaguars as their head coach, and I believe we would get 2 third-round comp picks. That'd be awesome, because he is interviewing with the Jags. He's also interviewing with the Bengals for the defensive coordinator position. And again, if you watched this podcast last offseason around this time, I was very loyal to Patrick Graham. So I have nothing but good vibes towards him, and I wish him the best. That being said, because we fired Antonio Pierce, I don't expect Patrick Graham to be back. Maybe they interview him for the head coaching vacancy for the Rooney Rule. No offense. It's just that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Jonathan says Patrick Graham will probably go to the Bengals. I can see
that. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you know what? Fuck, that'd be good for them.
Yeah. Thrash tuning back in says, "What's up? What's up, Thrash? Welcome back." 49er Media says, "I don't see Saleh coming back to the 49ers."
I don't know. I think it could be a good opportunity for him. Obviously, they have talent. They have to retain a lot of talent, but it worked last time, and I think if he wants to be a head coach again, he needs to go somewhere that can work for him. And he's definitely not getting a head coaching job this year.
He needs to go somewhere with talented players that are underperforming, and then it'll be another vote of, man, Robert Saleh is the real deal. If he goes to the 49ers right now, like, what do they have? They might lose Dre Greenlaw this offseason. They have Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, and that's about it. They have to bring back Talanoa Hufanga. They're probably going to lose Charvarius Ward. They have Diamador Lenore, who's solid, but there's a lot of holes in the defense, mainly the defensive line and the supporting linebackers. So, that's going to be something for Robert Saleh to think about. But if he wants to be a longtime defensive coordinator, I'm sure he would be welcomed with open arms, not just by the fans, but maybe by Kyle Shanahan, because he has not been able to replace Saleh or DeMeco Ryans. So Nick says, one day AP might become a very good head coach, but basically the reason he was hired by the Raiders was because Max Crosby wanted him as the coach. Yeah, I'd say the players wanting him for sure definitely impeded. And like Mike had me bring up the tweet about, that I think Vic Tafer said Max Crosby doing that did not please Mark Davis, so it definitely didn't help. But yeah, I mean, Antonio Pierce can essentially take this season, this experience of him being head coach, and he can reflect on what he did wrong. And if he ever gets the opportunity again, he can try to not make the same mistakes next time. Jonathan says, who keeps moving Jackson Powers Johnson from center in favor of Andre James? Johnson has been outplaying him.
Yeah, honestly, that's one of my biggest questions going into this offseason is how is center going to shake out? Because they have Andre James on a 4-year deal, pretty like around 7th market range for centers. Do they want to keep him at center and force Jackson Powers Johnson to left guard, or do you do what's probably the right thing and put Powers Johnson where he naturally is better, which is center.
Ham says, well, I think he meant to say oorah because he
Hoorah.
corrected it. But, having Oprah as the head coach of the Raiders would definitely be interesting, because she
Yeah.
would be like, and you get
get a
season
touchdown."
tickets, and you get season tickets, to like the fans. And yeah. More specifically, you get a touchdown, you get a quarterback, everybody gets a quarterback. Woo! Joe says the fan. Yeah, I just scared everybody away. The fans in Cincy do not want Graham and are mad that they are considering him.
Well, I was going to say a couple minutes ago, maybe they should consider Saleh.
Yeah. Dude, do you remember what I said? If the Bengals are smart, they will consider to move on from Zach Taylor, hire Ben Johnson as their head coach, and Robert Saleh as their defensive coordinator. Could you imagine?
Nasty duo.
That'd be nasty. Yep.
Dude, Ben Johnson with Joe Burrow would be fucking filth. Oh.
Yep. Jonathan says, not a fan of Gardner Minshew, but cutting him due to a collarbone injury, you feel bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be a backup somewhere regardless, and I would assume they do cut him. I don't know how that'll affect the cap yet. I'll look into it when we get closer to like free agency. But yeah, I expect that.
49er Media says, I don't want Saleh if we're only going to have him for 1 year if he does want to come back. I mean, here's the thing. If it's just like a 1 year, trying it out again, I'm still in favor of it because right now the 49ers are going to have a horrible schedule, like a horrible in a good way. Like they have a very favorable schedule, this upcoming year, and the Super Bowl is going to be here. Why not try and go all out?
Yeah.
All your veterans are aging. Just have, get the best defensive coordinator, head coach, which I think, Robert Saleh would be. Are you flexing the trophy right now?
What is that? What is that little guy right there?
All right. That's all the time that we have today. No, I'm just kidding. Joe says, Saleh is fine with Cincy or Zimmer. 49er Media, we need to stop losing a defensive coordinator every year. Yeah, I mean, they kind of jumped.
Maybe that's why they hired.
Never mind. They probably jumped the gun on firing Steve Wilkes.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me, in hindsight, I guess, of the Raiders letting go. After 2016, they let go of the offensive coordinator, and then 2017, the offense was just garbage.
Yeah,
I'm forgetting his name, but Raider fans would know.
Try bringing back Casey Hayward.
Raiders. I don't even know what team he played for this year, so kind of sounds like the type of player that's kind of done. I really liked him when he did play with us, but I feel like that was a good 3 years ago, back when we had Gus Bradley, who was actually just fired by the Colts. So I would doubt that. This 6th overall pick is very interesting because there are many options the Raiders can go with if it's not a quarterback. One of them being Will Johnson, the corner from Michigan. Right now, my hope for the 6th overall pick is that they go with just best player available. Position doesn't matter. Preferably the best player at his position in the draft. So that's Will Johnson. If they want to get really sexy, spooky, and go Ashton Gianti, I don't really think that's wise. But, man, that would change the run game, right? And you also have edge defenders, offensive linemen. You can go any direction at that pick. McMillan, the wide receiver. We'll see. But to your point, they have a lot of money in free agency. I would sign a better, younger corner.
Or if they have the money to spend, Charvarius Ward is, a good cornerback who's going to be available.
Yeah, so that would be great.
Joe says, keep up the good work, guys. Are you going to do draft coverage? We will definitely be talking about the draft. We've done it. So we've talked about both teams, for the past 2 seasons. We plan on continuing this until we die. But yeah, so hopefully I would hope that lasts at least a couple more seasons. I would hate to die sooner than that. That would really ruin my day. But please consider subscribing to the channel. You can check out, we pretty much during the season go live every single week, and during the off season, we might wait a couple weeks for there to be actual stuff to talk about. But when we do talk about stuff, always feel free to comment, even if you have an opposing opinion. We respect everybody's point of view, and Mike and I are willing to acknowledge that we're not always right. Maybe I am, but Mike definitely is not always right, and I'm willing to acknowledge that every single time. No, but seriously though, we appreciate you guys tuning in today. We're not done, by the way. We still have probably most of the show ahead of us. I know it's 11 o'clock right now, but we still have other things to talk about tonight. So I'm going to finish with these comments, and then we're going to get to our next topic. So Nick says, I have a feeling that if the Steelers get destroyed by the Ravens, Steelers fire their head coach. Well, I think the Steelers are going to lose to the Ravens. And it's just, Mike Tomlin has not had a losing season yet.
That would be wild. Continue.
I feel like if Mike Tomlin gets fired, he's going to be the top coaching candidate. Whenever he gets fired, it's just Mike Tomlin. Ever since they won that Super Bowl, they haven't had, Ben Roethlisberger got old, and they just haven't had the quarterback to really step in and lead that team. And I know I've had, Mike Tomlin always gets compared to, or Kyle Shanahan always gets compared to Mike Tomlin, because Mike Tomlin essentially he won one Super Bowl, and that just gives him full access for the rest of his life to be the head coach. I think it's more of just he won the Super Bowl and they haven't had a losing season. If maybe the Steelers front office is just waiting, for the day, Tomlin might have that losing season, but no, he's a great head coach, in my opinion, or at least very good. And he has proven that he can win a Super Bowl. Not many coaches in NFL history have proven that they can.
Yeah.
I think right now, the big question with Kyle Shanahan in the 49ers perspective is, can he win a Super Bowl?
Yeah. With Mike Tomlin, with him staying consistently above 500, especially post Ben Roethlisberger and very much post Ben Roethlisberger's prime, this season's pretty damn impressive, in my opinion. Even though they had the skid at the end of the season, maybe that's why there's worries about that, because they went on a pretty bad losing streak, and it's probably going to continue one more week. Losing out on the 3 seed, winning the division, they end up wild card. But no, you can't fire him. And the one thing that this made me kind of theorize for half a second was wow, what if the Raiders had intel on that, and that's one of their guys? But it's not happening.
That would be crazy, but also it's a Steelers tradition to not cycle through head coaches. They've only had how many head coaches in their history?
3.
Yeah,
3 or 4.
Yeah.
Or at least 3 since the 70s, I think.
Yeah.
Nuts.
So they should just keep it that way, because that's an excellent tradition to have. That's a good, solid foundation. You know what though? Imagine if the Raiders had that same tradition and they started it with Antonio Pierce, and they just kept him, for forever,
Yeah.
Or if the 49ers had started that tradition with Jim Tomsula, and we're just going to keep him for a while. And yeah. It helps that the coaches are, they're good at their job. Dude, Tomlin has been coaching for 18 years, or, he's double-digit years, has not had a single losing season. I don't know. That's so hard.
I get
it. You want to win the Super Bowl, but I've been watching the 49ers my entire life. And literally since I have been watching, it's either we don't make the playoffs or we go all the way to the NFC Championship game at least. That's literally been my entire life as a Niner fan.
I think the way that I feel about Mike Tomlin is exactly how I feel about, or at least what I want from a head coach,
Mhm.
developing a winning culture, and Godspeed to the rest of the NFL if he gets the quarterback. Like, the fact that he's winning with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields right now, like, we haven't seen them get the quarterback since Roethlisberger. It's been years. If they do, and they still have TJ Watt and a top 10 defense, they will win the Super Bowl. I guarantee it. As long as he's the coach. That's the type of coach I want. But what's their issue besides not drafting a quarterback? They keep having turnover at offensive coordinator.
Yeah. Steeler fans are not happy, says Nick. Yeah. If I were a Steelers fan, I would just be very unhappy if they hadn't won a Super Bowl. You know, I would be like, all right, what good is these regular season, what good are these regular seasons if this guy has proven that he cannot lead a team to a Super Bowl victory? They've gone to 2 Super Bowls with Tomlin, right? They lost one.
They beat the Cowboys or Seahawks.
No, they beat the Cardinals.
That
Tomlin,
was Bill Cowher. That was Cowher. They went against.
No, Cowher was the Seahawks.
No.
Yes.
Try again.
No, you try again.
Man, fuck. Maybe, but
look,
yeah,
hold
right.
on.
Fuck it.
So,
right.
Let me go Steelers.
But I know the Packers was their loss or his loss.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, you're right because that was like 2006 against like the Seahawks, and it was 2009 for the Cardinals. Sorry.
Yeah. Try me. Okay, so like I was saying, if you're wrong, if we are wrong, I will definitely let you know that Michael was wrong. So I apologize for him.
Yeah.
But you guys can stay for me. Okay.
Yeah. Stupid ass Raider fan talking out his ass.
Yeah. Jonathan says, is asking who the bigger diva was. It's me. Okay. No, but who was a bigger diva before they got traded? Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs? Well, Jacobs did not get traded.
Yeah.
But the answer is Devontae nonetheless.
Yeah. Jacobs was going on Twitter and sort of voicing, for lack of a better term, his frustrations, whereas Devontae demanded a trade and then got to the Jets and was still talking about the Raiders, at least a little bit, probably because he was being asked about it, but still, he was the bigger diva. And the Netflix show, going on there and just, he's mic'd up, it makes sense, but he was just complaining. It makes him look like that. So it's Devontae. Mm-hmm. Jacobs, I think, wanted to stay. He was mad because they didn't want to pay him.
Yeah.
That's a completely different scenario. Devontae wanted to leave because he was frustrated.
Mm-hmm. 49er Media says McMillan is a dog. I'm an Arizona fan.
He is sure-handed, that's for sure. That dude is I don't know who to compare him to. My first thought goes to Mike Evans, but I feel like it's something else, But I had been gaining this thought of man, McMillan would be so exciting. And you just, whenever you do get the quarterback, he is set the hell up. Keep Jacoby Myers and Bowers, McMillan, and Jacoby Myers. Forget it, dude. And just in that time, get running backs.
JT Money puts a bunch of emojis in here. Cheers. And then there's lightning bolts. I'm going to assume that's for Chargers. But if not, nonetheless, thank you for tuning in and, leaving a comment. Nick says, Steeler fans are not. Oh, I got to that one. Cowher, Seahawks, Tomlin, Packers. Yeah. And Cardinals. Because Cardinals was the one that he won. Nick says, I think last 6 playoffs, Steelers are one and done. Yep.
Yeah.
Same thing with, the Cowboys and, Yeah. Yeah. They're in the AFC. If you put Tomlin in the NFC, he would probably be more successful. That was my question right now is my fellow 49er fans, I love you guys, but if Kyle Shanahan was a head coach in the AFC, I don't think he would be in the championship game or in the Super Bowl every single year. You know?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think, Mike? Or maybe we'll talk about that later.
We'll get there. Yeah.
We'll get there. Jonathan says Brock Bowers needs to stop being suggested in trades. He is a generational talent. No. You do not trade Brock Bowers.
As long as Tom Telesco is the GM, that Brock Bowers is. I'll go on a limb and say Brock Bowers is the one guy in this roster that's not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm saying that.
You do not trade Brock Bowers. But just to give sort of a preview of what we're going to be doing the rest of the show, we're still going to be taking your guys' comments after the topics, or even during the topics if we feel like it perfectly ties in. We're going to go with Raiders 2024 season recap. Then we're finally going to talk about the 49ers firing Nick Sorensen and Brian Schneider. We're going to talk about the 49ers 2024 season recap. And then we're going to give our top 5 favorite, players from each of our teams this year. And then we're going to predict the wild card games this upcoming weekend because we did that last year. It was a lot of fun. It's just fun to talk about football in general. So one more question, then we'll get to it. But 49er Media asks, Josh, who is your draft crush? Like I said, I don't watch a lot of college football, but in terms of what I want for this team, if you can get me a defensive lineman, get me an offensive lineman in the first round, an offensive tackle. A center. 49ers need a center more than they need a tackle right now. I just don't know. Like, the reason why I immediately went to tackle is not so much like, Colton McKivitz has been better this year than he was in the past. But, like, when is Trent Williams going to retire? You have to reload.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony Brown says, why did we let Josh Jacobs walk out the door?
Well, imagine the Raiders currently paying him $16 million a year, and they can't fucking run the ball. I know it's Josh Jacobs. He's a great running back. Look at how he's playing on the Packers, but the Packers are built different than the Raiders, in part because they have a quarterback. They spread the field. They spread the ball down the field. They can develop play action. And they have a fucking offensive line that's actually, like, at least semi-consistent, right? The run blocking and the play calling for the Raiders was so bad. You couldn't convince me that Jacobs would have had a relatively good to great season. Like, he would have had low yards percentage. And what we would have been saying, I think a lot of people would have been saying, instead of like, man, this offensive line is garbage, they would have been saying, wow, man, Jacobs got paid and now he's just not even trying.
Yep. No, exactly. One thing I will say is running backs are a dime a dozen. You can find running backs, you can sign undrafted running backs who are able to go. Your running back will go as far as your offensive line will take you. And really, the teams that should be paying running backs are the ones that are ready to win now or who have very competitive teams. So, like, the perfect example this year, Saquon Barkley on the Eagles, rushed for 2,000 yards.
Yeah.
He was on the Giants before, right? Complete dumpster fire. He looks much better right now on his new team. Derrick Henry on the Ravens. Look at what that has done for the Ravens, adding, his rushing ability to that offense. They might go all the way to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
The third running back, Josh Jacobs.
Yep.
Look at what he's added to Green Bay's game. What they did, they changed. They used to be more pass heavy. They completely abandoned that. He is the offense.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Tony says, didn't think about it like that, but I get it. Yeah. So it's like they would have wasted Josh Jacobs' prime and wasted draft capital getting guys that could have helped. So think about it this way. Instead of paying Josh Jacobs, the Raiders were able to pay Christian Wilkins.
Yep. And also it's a new GM. So it kind of made sense that a new GM comes in and he's like, I'm going to make wiser decisions. Like, like Josh said, running backs are a dime a dozen. Like, you don't need to pay up for running back when you don't have the capabilities as a team to like go far in the playoffs. Like, why would you waste your your money, your cap space, when you can allocate that elsewhere for building the team, and you can get running backs a dime a dozen to come in and perform. They didn't perform very well this year because the offensive line was not performing very well. So it would have backfired had we kept him, but that's hindsight 2020. I very much wanted him to stay,
Yeah. Like last season, Zamir White was able to, almost hit the ground running in Josh Jacobs' place when Jacobs was injured towards the end of the year. And this year, Zamir White couldn't get anything going. Most of the running backs all season long could not get anything going. You go as far as the offensive line, the scheme, so yeah. 49er Media says this center class is meh. Yeah, so, I mean, they have to sign a free agent center then because Jake Brendel has to be replaced. He is the weak link on the 49ers offensive line. But if not, going back to the whole draft crush thing, how about another linebacker if Dre Greenlaw is not able to, come back? How about a defensive lineman? Because, the defensive line is – the 49ers get cooked every single game because they can't stop the run. So, yeah, that's sort of in the direction of where I'm thinking. And last year, that's where I wanted them to sort of focus, but they decided to add another wide receiver to the room. And to their credit, I like Ricky Pearsall, but it just wasn't exactly the need. Tony Brown says, hard to believe that Josh Jacobs was the leading rusher just a few years ago with the Raiders. Yeah.
Yeah. That's when they still had a quarterback.
49er Media says we need to retool the trenches 100%. Yeah, that's the biggest need on the 49ers right now. But let's go ahead and Mike.
Oh my God.
What?
Pete Carroll.
Oh.
I did not consider him.
You want Pete Carroll to chew through gum on the Raiders sideline? Is there a gum factory in Las Vegas?
It's just that Josina Anderson tweet is killing me about the availability of these two guys. Like, what if somebody talked to him? He's already interviewing for the Bears job. Apparently he wants the Bears job. But you want to talk about experienced and able to build a winning program? Wow. We'll finish the whole Antonio Pierce topic with that. I didn't consider that. Wow.